I think we can begin as soon as we're ready. Welcome, Dr. Bannicky.
Thank you so much.
Anxious to hear this.
When I finish, I will end and receive questions, and I'll be very happy to take questions at that time. And now I have to remember to say good evening, Chairwoman Anderson, Vice Chair McDonald, members of the school board, and Dr. Spence. I'm here this evening to provide you with a proposal for, I'll stop that in a second, for charting the course beyond Compass to 2020, our current strategic framework. As part of my presentation tonight, I plan to address the state and local requirements related to strategic planning. In my mind, those are the have-tos, but if you will. But I'll also be addressing our want-tos, and that's our guiding principles that will govern the process for developing our next strategic framework. And I'll also lay out the process and timeline of what we expect will happen when. So as you are already aware, the requirement to develop a division-wide comprehensive plan is stated in Virginia Standards of Quality, or SOQ, as part of Standard 6. This standard, titled Planning and Public Involvement, requires divisions to adopt a unified long-range plan developed with staff and community involvement. According to the SOQ, local school boards are required to review the plan every 2 years and adopt any necessary revisions. Prior to adopting a division-wide plan or making revisions to the plan, the SOQ requires school divisions to provide the community with an opportunity for inspection and at least one public hearing to solicit comments. At the local level, School Board Regulation 7-21.7 provides additional direction for developing the division's strategic plan. Our regulation requires the activation of an ad hoc strategic plan committee 1 year prior to the end of the division's strategic plan. The committee works to gather input and review division data. Citizen representatives to the committee are appointed by the school board, and the superintendent appoints staff members to serve on the committee and provide administrative support. And the superintendent also designates a staff member to serve as an administrative facilitator to the committee. To have a plan ready to go for July 1st of 2020, we need to begin this work during the current school year, 2018-2019. So the process we engage in to develop the next strategic framework, if those are the have-tos, these are the want-tos, will be guided by the principles that you'll see on this slide. And the first one is, the work will be grounded in our core values. So when I think about applying student-centered decision-making, it's really about working through a process where we're putting students' interests and needs first when we're making decisions. And we think about continuous learning. What that makes me think of for this process is being open-handed in what we know and are willing to learn from one another in the process. And innovation, really seeking new and improved ideas to benefit the work of the school division. And collaboration is a natural part of this process because it's a committee that involves staff members and community members working well together to improve the work of the school division. And it really is about respect, about inviting, recognizing, and esteeming the perspectives of others throughout the process. We'll also be using the VBCPS graduate profile as a launching point. For those of you who had the opportunity to be at the teacher forum meeting recently, I had an opportunity to address that group and talk more about the graduate profile and really introduce this as a launching point for our community to talk more about if these are the attributes that our community has identified as being important for students to be successful in the future, then what should VBCPS do to help students acquire those attributes? And then by engaging in a broadly inclusive planning process that seeks to maximize stakeholder involvement, we believe that we'll successfully establish a shared understanding of what VBCPS will be all about as we move forward beyond 2020. And in the end, our goal is to have a 5-year framework that is both concise and flexible and used to identify priorities and making decisions. And this framework will act as our alignment gauge as we develop strategies that shape our plan to work for the work in coming years. Now, on the slides that follow, we'll discuss the teams that will be involved in the planning process and how we will seek to involve our stakeholders and wider community in the process. So, when we developed our current strategic framework, we used a core management team made up of central office administrators to address what I would refer to as the logistics for the planning process, like overseeing outreach efforts and planning participation events. This team will also be responsible for preparing background information, such as division performance trends, future educational trends, relevant research and literature to aid the work of the second group, the Ad Hoc Strategic Plan Committee. This time for the core management team, our intent is to have central office administrators who are currently serving on what we call the Compass Collaborative, and that's the group that you hear from mid-year and end of year when we're giving you updates on our strategic framework, in addition to principals, working together on that as a core management team in this process. Oh, I don't want to go back. We really feel like we had the right mix of people on the committee for Compass to 2020 and are proposing that the committee again be composed of students, teachers, principals, parents, members of the business and military community, as well as representatives of higher education, school board, and central office staff. And this group will work to review community input and the background information provided by the core management team. The goal of this group is to identify priorities and draft a strategic framework that will guide our division in coming years. Now, to aid the work of the Ad Hoc Strategic Plan Committee, there are two major tasks that must be accomplished during the strategic planning process. And the first is to gather stakeholder and community input, and the second is to prioritize the findings to emerge from the input process. To develop the strategic framework, we plan to gather input in a variety of ways. The first is by meeting with as many internal and external stakeholder groups as we can to share where we are and what we've been doing under Compass to 2020 and seek input into the next strategic framework. We'll also be using, as Dr. Spence mentioned in his report, a virtual town hall to gather input from our community. And it'll be hosted on a site specifically built for that. We used a similar approach when we did Compass to 2020 and really felt like that reaped some really good dividends for us. Stakeholder meetings, as well as a virtual town hall, combined with our own in-house review of trends, review of performance data, are all sources of input. After we've gathered input from those sources, it'll be important to engage in a process for prioritizing the findings to emerge. So we're proposing a survey at the second stage of the process. We plan to clearly communicate the timeline of all participation opportunities and their purpose, whether it's input or prioritization, throughout the planning process. And another opportunity for participation in the strategic planning process will come when it's time to receive public comment on the draft framework. So, you know I love Gantt charts, so here's your Gantt chart. So we're proposing the following timeline for the strategic planning process. The red triangles that will appear, and it's small, but I think you also have access to an electronic copy. The red triangles represent the major milestones throughout the planning process, including the work we started this past summer when we first began discussions with the school board about the strategic planning cycle, as well as today's workshop. Our plan is to have a draft of the framework goals by the time of the school board retreat, and formally present the framework for information on October 8th, 2019. And we would plan to gather public comment on the framework as part of the 2019 K-12 Resource Fair that's held at the Virginia Beach Convention Center, with the goal of adopting the framework by the end of November for implementation in July of 2020. I don't know if my clicks kept up. Okay. The key tasks associated with the planning process appear beneath the timeline. The light blue bars represent the opportunities for input that I mentioned previously, the virtual town hall and stakeholder meetings. And the orange bars represent the prioritization process, where we summarize findings to emerge from the input process, and we work to develop the stakeholder survey. And you can see from the dark blue bars that the work of the Ad Hoc Strategic Plan Committee is tentatively scheduled to begin in January and extend to July of 2019. And all of these tasks are going on as the expanded Compass Collaborative Group, that group that includes central office as well as principals, continues the work associated with Compass to 2020 and continues into the preparation necessary for implementing the next strategic framework. On behalf of my Office of Planning, Innovation, and Accountability and the communities you represent, we thank you for your time and consideration this evening. And at this point, I would like to open it up for questions or suggestions about the proposed process.
Do we have any questions, suggestions? Okay, I think I see nothing. No one seems to
You had a
have-
question about accreditation. You can't ask me a question. I'm kidding. I will take that. Yeah. Is that the benefit of going after the meeting?
I'm
Okay,
anxious to
okay.
get started with
Well,
this,
you know
and I
where to
know you
find
are
me.
too.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's talk. No, stop.
No.
No, you're not allowed to do
Can I
that
just
right
can I just say no? No.
now. No. No, don't do that.
I'm kidding. I love my job. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, that means we are adjourned for the evening.